Good morning. We are here today for another live stream class on using Fusion 360, aimed specifically at beginners who are looking to use it to help them with their woodworking. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do today is build a simple bookcase. We're going to model the whole thing right from scratch. This is the academic version of Fusion 360, which is pretty much the same as the free hobbyist version. It has a few export features that aren't there, and a little bit of modeling that isn't, but we're not going to use anything that you can't find if you are using the free version or the student version. So we will start today with creating a new sketch, and we will create that sketch from the top, because that will give us the full dimensions, both the length and the width of the shelves. So we will make a shelf for our bookcase. If I click on this dimension tool here, or push D, I can pick this line and say that it is going to be 23 inches long. I'll pick the outside line and say that's going to be 10 3/8 inches deep. And that is pretty much our shelf. Now we're going to make some legs. Those legs are going to be offset, and they will be outside here on the corners. We're only going to bother to make one of them, and we will just match that one all the way across. We will hit equals and click on the two sides to turn those into square legs. And now all I have to do is give it one dimension, and those legs are going to be 1 inch and 7/8 square. They'll go on each corner. And that's all we really need. We're going to have those legs, we're going to have some bracing, and we're going to have these shelves that will go into our legs. Okay, so I will hit Finish Shelf. I should probably mention this is one of two different bookcases we're going to do, so this is just one part of our daily class. So let's make some legs. We're not really all that sure how tall our legs are going to be at the moment. So we'll start off with our shelf. We will click our extrude tool up here, select the two pieces of our shelf because it overlaps with the leg and we want to make sure that that is not a problem. And we are going to make our shelves 11/16 thick and say New Component. We'll rename this just by double-clicking on it and typing shelves, so we don't get confused. We now have our shelf. We can zoom out by rotating the mouse wheel and see that shelf in its situation. If we hit this rectangular pattern tool and pick our shelf, oh wait, no, we need to pick it as a body, and we say that we want to have this move in the upward direction. Directions, vertical. Now we can see we have 3 shelves. Now I want 5 shelves, so I will change this to be 5. And I will say that this extent distance is actually going to be 54 inches. And say OK. Now we have our 5 shelves. Now, I think that first one should probably actually be a little off the ground. So I'm going to go back. And because we are using this modeling software that allows us to change anything in our history, I can right-click on this feature and hit Edit Feature. And instead of it being on the ground, on the profile plane, I'm going to say Offset. And I'm going to offset the first one 7 inches up. Now, of course, I will need to right-click on the pattern, and I will need to change this because it is now 54 inches from the bottom shelf. But I don't want 54 inches from the bottom shelf. I want 54 inches from the floor. So we will say 54 minus 7. I could do that in my head, but the fact that it will calculate it for me, it will remind me why it looks like that when we get to it later. Okay, so I will turn back on the sketch where we have the other piece. I'm going to click on Extrude again and do exactly the same thing, except I'm going to do it with the leg. Now I want that leg to go all the way to the top. And I know that that's 54 inches up, but in case I want to change it, what I'll do is I'll set this to Object, select the top face, and it will draw all the way exactly to the top face. Now I want it to go a little beyond that, so I'm going to say my offset is 3/8, and it will go 3/8 of an inch up beyond it, and I will say that's a new component as well, and hit OK. I'm going to call that legs. Now, I want that leg to go up and through each of the shelves, but how are we going to attach those shelves? Now, there are several different ways that you could attach them. You could have a bracing piece, you could have dowels go straight through into the shelves themselves. I think what we're going to do is we're going to actually create a little brace for each of these. So I'm going to create a mirror. I'm going to mirror the body of this leg, and I'm going to mirror it by selecting the center in this direction. And I'll hit OK. Now, to repeat any command in Fusion, you just right-click on the background and hit repeat. I'm going to pick these two legs, and I'm going to mirror them across the center in the other direction. When I hit OK, now I have 4 legs. It already looks like a fairly interesting bookcase, right? So the only thing that I want to do is create some bracing. Now I think that the bracing should be interesting. So I'm going to flip this up on its back, turn off the sketch that we already have, and I'm going to create a new sketch right here on the bottom of the shelf. You could do this pretty much in any pane that floats in that direction, but I think this works quite well. So I'm going to hit P for project, and I'm going to copy these 4 legs that we have just created into our sketch. Now remember, we didn't even create these in a sketch before, but we can just use those dimensions that we have. Now I'm going to join up from one leg to the other. And you can see it's already chosen that those are parallel. Now I could pick them manually and hit parallel if I didn't quite get that. So that is not something you need to worry about. Now I'm just going to tell it that I want this, with the dimension tool, to be exactly 7/8 of an inch thick. I'm going to draw a guideline from the center of one to the center of the other. And I'm going to make these symmetrical around that guideline by picking them, hitting the symmetry tool, and choosing that guideline. Now the problem with that, and this is the way that things are typically done in industry, is having these through the center point is going to make this visible on the outside. So we're not actually going to have those symmetrical around that point. That is how this would normally be done, but it doesn't really quite make sense to do it that way. All right, so how are we going to do these 2 points? What we're actually going to do is we're going to have it go from the outside to the inside on each of these, and have this be squared off on both ends. So we will draw a line that connects the 2 endpoints, and another that connects the 2 endpoints. And we are going to use our perpendicular constraint to go between these pieces. They will both be perpendicular. And that should do it. So now we have an offset rectangle, and it is exactly in the right place. Now, it is still blue. There is something that is willing to move on us here. I'm not quite sure what it is, and we're pretty much going to ignore that because it's already in place. We know where it is in our model. Sometimes Fusion has a little question about where things actually reside in the model, and that's perfectly okay. It's just sometimes a little difficult to figure out where it is. If we were going to build this, that would be sufficient for our needs. So we're going to hit extrude, and we'll extrude this piece. Let's see what direction it's going. It's going down, which is the direction we want, and we want it to be exactly 5/8 thick. We don't want it to join, we want it to be a new component, and hit OK. Not bad. Now, that one is a great little brace, but what I actually want to do is I want to add a little bit of joinery on the thing. What we are going to do with that is add a tenon. So if I turn off the legs, I'll rename this to be brace, and I am going to make a round tenon from a dowel. And we are going to put it right through this piece here. It's only going to be a very short tenon, but that's all right. We will click on the New Sketch tool. I am going to make that tenon on the edge here. We will make that a 1/4 inch dowel by hitting Dimension and putting in 1/4. And we are going to tell it that we want it to be 1/4 of an inch from the top and 1/4 of an inch from the inside. And that will tell us exactly where it is. If I hit Extrude and click on it, I can say that I want it to be symmetrical, and I want it to be a 1/2 inch long. And you can see where it's actually going to draw it right there. It's cutting at the moment, but what I want is for it to be a new component. And I will hit OK. And now that is our little round dowel tenon. And you can see why I put it offset away from the center, because we don't want it to poke out the other side of our brace. Now, there's only one of them, so we want to hit Mirror. We want to take this mirror plane, this object, and select it. We will pick a mirror plane, and we will mirror it across the center line. Now, it's not actually going to go the place that we want it to go at the moment, but that's not something we really need to worry too much about. We will right-click and hit Repeat, pick them both, and mirror them across the center line. Now, one of those is going to end up exactly where we wanted it, but we're not done yet. We will repeat and mirror across that same center line the first brace, and now we have all 4 dowels and both braces that are interconnecting. Now, what we actually want to do is have a half-lap joint here in the middle. So I'm going to turn off the shelves, and what we need to do is cut in our joinery. Now, there are 5 or 6 different ways I can think of to do a half-lap joint in Fusion, but this is the one I always keep coming back to. I will hit Split Body, and I'm going to split this body using the outside faces of the other. Let's see if I can select that properly. Scroll over, and I'll pick these 2 faces. So now I have an in-between piece. If I open up the braces here, I can see I have this little piece in the middle here. And I need to cut that in half. So I'm going to go in here and say Construct Midplane, and I will pick that it is going to be between this face on top and this face on bottom. That is a plane right through the middle, and I'm going to, where did that body go? Yes, that one. I am going to cut this body using the plane that we just created. Wherever it has gone, it is in here somewhere. We can just turn off these bodies and pick this plane. We'll turn them back on. And now we have a top and a bottom half. Now we'll just get rid of one of those 2. And we will turn off the other leg. This leg is body 2, so we'll just turn it off. And now you can see we've actually got our half-lap joint cut in 1/2. What we need to do, though, is put those pieces back together. So we will take one of these bodies and join it to the other 2 and say OK. And now we're back to having only 2. But one has a half-lap cut in it and the other does not. So what we'll do is we will cut using our Combine tool. We will cut our big one, say Cut, keep the tool, because the tool is the other piece, and cut it with the first one. And now if we have one turned on, we can see that's the bottom half, and the other is the top half of our half-lap joint. I'm going to call this dowels before we forget what it is. And now we have one of our braces, and that is complete, and the joinery is done. So we will turn these back on and take a look at what we're doing here. And what we'll do is we'll say rectangular pattern. We're going to copy the braces. We're going to have these go in the direction up, so we pick up. There should be 5 of them. And again, we go 54 inches up. Actually, I think it's 54 minus 7, wasn't it, that we were doing? 54 minus 7. And if we do that, the total is the same, the starting place is lower, and the ending place is lower, but only by exactly the amount that we want it to be. So you can use the same spacing or the same extent to duplicate components across a wide variety of places. And that gives us our joinery on those. The shelving we are going to have to attach using some method so that we can get that on there solidly. But for the moment, let's cut the rest of those dowel joints right into our legs. So if I open up the dowels and I look at our bodies, we only have the 4 on the bottom. So we're going to say again, rectangular pattern, direction up, change this to 5, and call this 54 minus 7. And when we hit OK, we will now see that we have dowels all the way to the top of our piece. Now, the only thing we need to do is cut those dowels into the legs, which will allow us to have our joinery finished. So I'll pick a leg, pick a body, select them all, and hit OK. I'll repeat that for the other 3 legs. And you can just quickly repeat. And that gives all of these the joinery that we want. Now the interesting thing, and this is why I didn't do it before, is because the order doesn't matter where you cut these things. So when I made this brace down here at the bottom, I needed to cut the dowels into the actual brace pieces as well. Now, you need to do that before you duplicate it, unless you want to go in and click each one of these brace pieces and cut the dowels into them. But that isn't very efficient. Now, we've done a whole bunch of steps since then, and it's really important to get things in the right order, because it only makes sense. But does that mean we have to undo everything? Well, no, absolutely not. What we can do is we can scroll back in time, and that was my reason for showing it this way. If we go back in time, we can see we only have one brace, and that brace is about to be copied with its dowels. But if I go in here, and I do exactly the same thing, and I cut one brace with the 4 bodies, I repeat, I cut the other brace with the 4 bodies, and hit OK. We've now added them to the timeline, not at the end, but in the middle. And if we scroll to the end, turn off our dowels, turn off our legs, and look right up at one of the top shelves, you will see that it also has the space for the joinery cut in it that we just added to our timeline. So, there we go, we have those. Now, that's not the only thing we can do if we go back in time. If we go back in time, we can actually do something far, far more involved. What I'm going to do is create a new sketch at exactly the same point in time, and we are going to create some dowel holes that will hold our pieces together. I'm going to create a line that goes from the center out to the middle of our piece. doesn't necessarily have to be centered, but I would like it to be, so I am going to try that again and actually get that to be centered. We will draw two other lines out to the side, and I'm going to say that these two lines are equal, and that guarantees us that we will be in the center. We'll make all of these guidelines by selecting them and hitting X. And I will now create a circle. Our circle, if I hit dimension, is going to be 3/8 of an inch. A 3/8 inch dowel. And I am going to create a rectangular pattern. I will pick the dowel. I will say the direction will be along this line. Scroll in and copy several of them out that way. What I actually want is to have 5 of them, but not in one direction. I want them to be symmetrical, and I want them to go out considerably further than that. So we have our pieces. I want them to go out 10 inches, and I will say OK. We now have 5 little dowel holes. So I am going to get rid of the center of these. The center is not going to be as stable in terms of attaching these pieces. I will now say finish sketch. Oh, we'll keep the center. Actually, now that I think of it, we'll say finish sketch. And we will hit extrude. We will pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If there were 100 of these, we would use a bulk selection tool, but it's probably faster just to click them than it is to do anything else. I am going to say that these are going to go in 1/4 of an inch. They're going to go symmetrically 1/4 of an inch. And I will say new component. And we can scroll up and see exactly where they're going to be. They're going to go 1/4 inch in both directions. And I want them to go from the bottom of the shelf in both directions. So if we turn the brace off, we can see that we have these dowels going into the bottom of the shelf. I'm going to call these shelf dowels. I think I should go back and rename this to be brace dowels. Brace dowels. It's always a good idea to make sure you keep things in a sensible and organized way. We'll open it up, take a look at these. We actually want to mirror these across the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll turn off the center one because that one doesn't need to be there. It's already mirrored. We'll say we're going to mirror these across the center line and say OK. So now we have 9 of these into the shelf. Very good. What we are going to do is we will rectangular pattern these as well. Up 5, 54 minus 7. And if you keep remembering this spacing, we could actually save that as a parameter, but for the moment we'll just leave it the way it is. And you can see that we have now copied them onto every shelf. Not bad. We're going to cut those into the shelf, and we're going to cut those into the brace. So we say combine, brace piece, and we'll cut those in. Doesn't matter which one, we'll just use them all. Anything that doesn't actually touch, it's going to ignore when we cut. So you can just pick everything in a folder, everything in a component, and cut using that. And all will be good. Now we need to repeat that same command for one shelf. Quite a lot of them. 2 shelves. I've zoomed out quite a bit using all this scrolling around. Doesn't matter. It remembers where everything is. 3 shelves. A lot of the time, there is a fast and efficient way of doing these things repeatedly, but when you only have a few to do, sometimes it's just good practice with the mouse and with the keyboard to do them manually. I know that sort of goes against a lot of my efficiency statements. But, whoops, target body, shelf, tool bodies, all of these. Okay. It's looking good, looking good. We'll zoom back in. We will close this folder. And when we scroll back to the present and put all our braces back in, we will now find that if we turn off our shelves and we turn off our shelf dowels, we have all the joinery cut into the shelves just the same as it needed to be, because we copied them all after. Okay, so we are good. I think that looks like a nice bookcase. There's just one other thing that we're going to do. As we do in just about all of our somewhat intermediate videos, we will hit A for appearance, and we will think about how we want this to actually look. Could we make it out of solid maple the way that we have done it here? Absolutely. But because this was actually a piece that was modeled for one of our followers, we're going to use the way that it will actually work in their home. It's going to be made of ash, so we're going to change the whole thing to be semi-gloss ash, because that's how they're going to finish it. And we are going to use ebonized ash on the braces to set them off, and we're going to use actual ebonized color, so it will be much, much darker, and hit close. And now if we look at it, we have ebonized ash on those pieces, and we're going to do the same thing for the legs, and hit close. And now we have this beautiful piece with these natural ash shelves and a dark ebonized look on the support pieces and the legs. So there we have it today. If you have liked what we're doing here, please hit like. If you don't like this video, of course, I'm not sure why you're still watching, but if you have suggestions for us, please leave them in the comments if you're going to hit dislike, which of course you are welcome to do if you so desire. You can certainly share this with any friends or on your social media that you think might be interested in our content. And please, if you want to come back and see more of these videos that we do live, plus the pre-recorded videos, you can always subscribe to our channel and click the bell so you are notified. We actually do these quite often, so you are welcome to come back anytime you like. Take a look at our other videos if you have any questions, and feel free to send us a question in the comments below or go to the website. That's all for this time. Thank you for watching, and enjoy your modeling and building in your own shop. Bye-bye.